Stitch from Lilo and Stitch is a monster, a genetic experiment pieced together from the DNA of various alien species from across the galaxy. But what if I wanted to make my own Stitch, to take the DNA of creatures from our planet to create my very own little experiment 626? What a delightfully evil idea. Hello internets, welcome to Film Theory, the show that knows that Ohana means family, and family means that you should subscribe. Alright folks, it's that time again. Yep, it's time for Disney to take yet another one of their beloved animated films to put it through the live-action remake machine. Yay! On the one hand, like many of you guys, I'm getting real tired of this live-action remake shtick, but also, if you're gonna remake old movies, why not the ones that could actually use the boost? You know, stuff like Atlantis or Treasure Planet. God, that'd be so cool. Thankfully though, I think that their latest one, Lilo and Stitch, actually looks pretty good. Like, listen, I loved Stitch as a kid. I was like 8 when the first one came out and thought it was great. The sequels were fun, the TV show is goated, the anime existed, and the core message of how family is most important, even if you aren't related by blood, it's timeless. But speaking of family, you know, I've really been thinking about adding to mine with a new pet. I moved last year to work with my Theorist fam, and I really missed having just like an adorable little guy running around. Growing up, I always had cats, and while I'll probably be getting another one in the near future, please leave your name suggestions in the comments, I will be using one of them. I think I also want something a little more exotic, something chaotic, something like, well, Stitch. I mean, come on, a cute little alien man with the superpowers that I can talk to, like what else can you ask for? Okay, nobody's perfect. But alas, there are a few minor issues with my dream of adopting my very own Stitch. Despite this being a live-action remake, Stitch isn't real. He's a CGI cartoon, and even in-universe, he's an alien genetic experiment. Stitch was created by stitching together the DNA of aliens from across the universe. And unfortunately for me, I don't have $150,000 lying around to go fly up in Jeff Bezos' rocket for 11 minutes to go find myself an alien life. So if I want a real-life Stitch, I have to figure out how to make one myself using what we got here on Earth. Yeah, if Stitch was created by splicing together the DNA of different aliens, why couldn't we do the same with the weird and wacky creatures we have here on Earth? Is this a dumb idea? Maybe. Is it even technically possible? Probably not. Do I care? Not one bit. I mean, listen, we've been hitting some heavy topics lately. I hope one that's fun and lighthearted. Not every theory needs to be over the top. But even then, believe me when I say that the hardest part of actually making a real-world Stitch isn't going to be what you expect. So get your plasma blasters locked and loaded, loyal theorists, as we embrace our inner mad scientist and figure out how to create our very own Experiment 626. So before we start this wild goose chase, I do want to say, though I joked about this not really being possible, creating our own hybrid animal might actually be possible in the future. If you keep up with science news or have just heard us talk about this on the channels before, you might remember something called CRISPR-Cas9. No, that's not a toaster oven or air fryer. It's actually a powerful technology that lets scientists edit genes. And in theory, in genetic theory, it could even let scientists take the DNA from one creature and put it into the DNA of another. For example, back in 2023, scientists in China took the genes for creating spider silk, which is about 5 times stronger than steel, believe it or not, and put it into a silkworm. This let the silkworm make the stronger spider silk. So here's how we're gonna turn our dream of making my very own Stitch into a reality. We're gonna start with the base animal, and then for each of Stitch's wacky traits, we'll find a real-life animal with equally wacky traits, and then yoink that DNA using CRISPR. Easy peasy. By the end of it, we'll hopefully have created the perfect little guy for my Ohana to be complete. So, this now then begs the question, what should our baseline animal be? Well, in Lilo and Stitch, Lilo and Nani adopt Stitch because they think he's a dog. But while he certainly has the loyalty of man's best friend, he absolutely does not look the part. He's got a shorter body, a bulbous nose, and opposable claws. A more fitting template would be, well, Nani, what do you think?
I think it might be a koala, an evil koala.
And you know what? I agree. A koala is going to be a great template to serve as the starting point for our little experiment here. But of course, we're quite a bit away from turning this to this. So let's break down exactly what we need for our Stitch to match the Disney one. Well, from where I'm sitting, it comes down to a few main traits: Stitch's look, his senses, and his strength. Let's start out with Stitch's look, and one of the big things I'm noticing right out the gate, he's got way more going on than just the ears, eyes, nose, and mouth of a regular mammal. Yeah, he's got these sort of like weird spines on his back and antenna on his head. Let's start there, and specifically with the spines on his back. Taking a look at Stitch's design, you'll notice these 3 long spikes along his back. and according to a behind-the-scenes book produced for the first film, they're not just decorative. They're deadly. Yeah, the middle joint of Stitch's spine apparently houses venom sacs that give these spikes a venomous touch. This is actually a thing some species on Earth have. A deep-sea fish like lionfish and stonefish, which have venomous spikes as well, so we can nab that trait from them. If we wanted to. Yeah, you know, since this is gonna be my pet, I think I'm just gonna make the big boy decision to skip this one. Now, Stitch might be a mishmash of a bunch of different creatures, right? It must have taken a lot of effort to stitch Stitch together. Almost like if you want to watch things from a ton of different streamers. But that would be a problem of the past thanks to NordVPN, the sponsor of today's theory. Guys, I know that you know what a VPN is at this point, but you might not realize all the cool stuff it can do to make your life better. The biggest thing for me is what I just mentioned. I have to watch a ton of stuff, not only for my job, but just because I love movies and TV. And it's always such a pain to track down what is streaming where. But with NordVPN, I can trick my internet connection into thinking it's coming from a different state, or even a different country. Just one click and bam, all of a sudden I have access to all of what that country has to offer on their different streamers. Like if you're an American like me, you could pay for both Disney Plus and Hulu, or if you're a smart cookie, you could instead get NordVPN, hop on a server up to Canada, and get most of Hulu's content on Disney Plus for no additional charge. We're talking everything from Family Guy to Alien to Futurama. Yeah, they got us paying for more than one subscription here in the States, and nobody wants to do that. So if you want to start watching anywhere in the world, go to nordvpn.com/filmtheory to get a huge discount on a 2-year plan plus 4 bonus months for free. And best of all, it's all risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Once again, that's nordvpn.com/filmtheory, or just click the link in the description. Thanks again to Nord, and let's head back to Hawaii to check on our Stitch. Moving up to Stitch's head though, what's the deal with these antennae? Yeah, in the insect world, antennae are used to touch, smell, and even hear everything around them. So, for Stitch, these would supercharge his senses, which we'll get to in a second. Antennae come in a variety of shapes and sizes, but looking at how Stitch's antennae get thicker near the tips, I'd say they most resemble the ones found on butterflies, moths, and beetles. We can pretty much go with any of these options we'd like to for Stitch, so we're just gonna go with the monarch butterfly, because I like them. Speaking of bugs, you might have noticed that Stitch has another quirk that's a bit bug-like. He has 6 limbs. Interestingly, despite how useful it would be to have an extra set of arms, there aren't any vertebrates, that's animals with spines like you and me, that normally have 6 limbs. But of course, many insects do have 6 or more limbs. So while we're adding in some bug DNA for the antenna, maybe we should splice in some genes to give our Stitch the ability to play co-op games by himself. But that's a little easier said than done. Why? Well, number of arms and legs isn't exactly a gene that we can find, so we're gonna have to get a little bit creative. See, while there might not be a gene for how many legs you have, many animals do have what is known as Hox genes. These are super important in early development and making sure that your head is on straight. Literally. Hox genes are basically kinda like blueprints. They maintain the body plan for, well, your body. They make sure that your head, arms, and legs are all in the right spot while you're developing. Each section of the body gets its own set of Hox genes, and when these genes are damaged, some pretty wacky things can happen. Like this fruit fly, who you'll notice has a leg growing out where an antenna should be. So what does that mean for our Stitch? Well, this would be the best chance for us to make sure that he has 6 limbs. If we can go into Stitch's Hox genes using our CRISPR technology and just copy the section of his genes responsible for arms, theoretically, that might get him to sprout an extra set of limbs. Maybe. There's no actual data on if this would work or not, but hey, it's worth a shot. But speaking of limbs, we should talk about this too. Yeah, one big thing that Stitch is able to do is slurp his extra appendages back into his body. Why couldn't you just make this easy, buddy? After doing a deep dive into the research, I wasn't able to find any example of an animal that can just like suck limbs back into themselves. Like at first I thought we could be getting somewhere with the turtle, but they work differently. So again, I had to get creative, and you know what? There are some close alternatives. Meet the peanut worm. This gross little guy lives at the bottom of the ocean and is able to extend this tongue, arm thing out of its mouth that it can use to find food and move around. Now that would definitely work for us, but we might not even need to get that gross or even go to the bottom of the ocean for this. If we want something way closer to home, we can just look at some other furry friends, and specifically cats. Yep, hear me out. Cat claws work in a very specific way. See, cats have muscles and tendons in their feet that, similar to Stitch, let them extend and retract their claws into their bodies at will. While retracting, the muscles even kind of look like rubber bands that pull pull and fold the claw back into the paw. And if we look at that art book from earlier, the description they give for how Stitch's arms retract looks pretty similar. So yeah, let's go with the DNA of our feline friends instead of that gross ocean worm for this one. Okay, so that's all good, but listen up because now it's time to look at Stitch's ears. Yep, Stitch's big floppy ears aren't just for show. We actually see in the first movie that he has incredible hearing, and he's straight up able to hear whispers from dozens or even hundreds of feet away.
Well, what's he doing?
Keep quiet. He's listening for us.
How good is his hearing?
Now, if we're looking for ears that look the part and can pick up sound with the best of them, well, I hear there's no better choice than the Finnick Fox. Finnick Fox ears measure around 4 to 5 inches and are the longest ears relative to body size in the entire dog family. These bad boys are so sensitive to hearing that Finnick Foxes can actually hear their prey moving underground. So if we give our Stitch a nice pair of Finnick Fox ears, we won't be able to open up a bag of chips anywhere in the tri-state area without him finding out and coming to beg for some. So far, I'd say that our Stitch is now looking the part, but what about how he actually, well, looks? I mean, like, with his eyes. Yeah, we already worked out his hearing, but Stitch also has some truly amazing peepers that can do it all. He can magnify objects, he's got night vision, he can see in infrared, and he's even got X-ray vision. Yeah, his eyes are good. Too good, in fact. Fun fact, X-ray vision isn't actually possible in the real world because X-rays don't bounce the same way that visible light does. Eyes, as we know them, literally couldn't see them because the light can't bounce off our eyes, no matter how good they are. So sadly, we will have to scratch that for our Stitch. Secondly, while each of these other powers can be found here on Earth, there's no animal with a single pair of eyes that can do it all. But that's okay. Remember, we're stitching together genes from multiple species anyway, so we can make our Stitch see it all. For zooming in, we can give our Stitch eyes like a hawk. But literally, while not able to zoom in and out like your phone camera, hawks and other similar birds like eagles do have multiple focal lengths inside of their eyes. That basically means they have different parts of their eyes that have different levels of focus, which would more or less let them kinda zoom in. This is how they're able to pick out rabbits from thousands of feet up while they're out hunting. But what about when things get dark? Hawk and eagle eyes aren't nearly gonna be as sharp then, so we'll have to pick up some DNA from our friend Mr. Owl too. Owl eyes are very large and filled with tons of what are known as rod cells, the kind of eye cells that are very good at detecting low light. Basically, the more rods inside of your eyes, the more light is able to get in, even when it's dark. That means that owls, and therefore our Earthling Stitch, can find prey even in low light, even in the dead of night. Now, that leaves the final piece of this vision puzzle being seeing infrared light. If you don't know, humans are only able to see colors in a very narrow band of what light actually exists. This is called visible light, and it's the classic Roy G. Biv stuff you learned about in school. But just outside of that range, you have ultraviolet, which means above violet light, and infrared, which means below red light. Now, while you and me can't see those colors, some animals can, including the most unlikely animal of all, the key to finishing out Stitch's eyesight, the goldfish. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Turns out that out of all the animals out there, goldfish are among the few that can see both infrared and ultraviolet light. So combining the zoom and enhancement of the hawk, the night vision of the owl, and the broad color vision of the goldfish, ain't nothing getting past our Stitch's eyes. Now, if you thought his sight and sound made Stitch superhuman, you ain't seen nothing yet. There's one more ability that Stitch has that's second to none: his incredible strength. This car right here is a Volkswagen Beetle, which would weigh roughly 2,050 pounds, or almost 930 kilograms, and Stitch is picking it up and tossing it around like it's a basketball. So how strong would Stitch be exactly? Well, check this out.
Yes, you can hold 3,000 times your own weight, but not an ounce more.
Yeah, we know that Stitch can lift 3,000 times his own body weight, and we see just how much he's picking up right here. So let's do the math. In this scene, we see Stitch holding up 2 bulldozers. Small bulldozers can weigh about 17,000 pounds each, so doing some basic back-of-the-napkin math and accounting for those steel beams too, we can figure out that Stitch weighs roughly 12 pounds or 5.4 kilograms. And hey, that checks out, since we see Lilo able to actually lift Stitch herself. So okay, how are we possibly gonna get our Stitch to be this strong? I mean, after all, being able to lift 3,000 times your own body weight is crazy, and even puts ants to shame, since they can only carry a measly 10 to 50 times their own body weight. Well, the explanation for Stitch's insane strength is that his muscles contain huge amounts of myofibrils. Those are basically the strings inside of your muscles that actually do the contracting when you flex those sick guns. So if Stitch's muscles are super dense with these, that would explain his super strength despite his noodle arms. And thankfully, there is an animal that would be the perfect candidate for these highly packed muscles. muscles. The gorilla. Yeah, these guys are notoriously so strong because they have tons of myofibrils inside of their muscles. I mean, obviously it's not enough for them to lift 3,000 times their own body weight, but it's a cartoon. What are we gonna do? And just the cherry on top here, gorillas actually have trouble swimming partially because their bodies are so much more dense than a human's. Who else does that sound like?
What is that?
Water. Most of the planet is covered in it.
He won't survive in water. His molecular density is too great.
Yeah, despite living in Hawaii and occasionally surfing, Stitch can't swim. It's like his big weakness. So his muscles being packed with myofibrils more than a gorilla, it all just lines up. I do wonder who'd win in a fight though, 100 gorillas or one Stitch? And at this point, we've spliced up this koala with DNA from everything from a fennec fox, a butterfly, hawk, owl, goldfish, gorilla. We even duplicated his arms. And still, that doesn't cover every single thing we see throughout this franchise, like turning into a ball like an armadillo, or a sense of smell comparable to a wolf. But all of that, it's easy to come by, not at all a challenge to put in. But, well, here's the thing. There is one last thing our real Stitch is missing, and it comes back down to his look. Yeah, okay, I strategically left this out when talking about that because while doing my research, it was surprisingly hard to find animals that fit this. And what was this incredibly difficult trait to find? Well, believe it or not, Stitch's color, his blue fur. Yeah, I'm serious. See, while it's not unique in the world of animated mascots, blue is one of the rarest color pigments found in nature. Blue dye used to be super valuable in ancient times because it was so hard to find stuff to actually make it, and animals don't exactly evolve to look blue most of the time. And even the ones that do, well, a lot of them aren't actually blue. This is probably most true for mammals, which is what our Stitch is based on. Sure, a quick Google search will show you things like the blue monkey, which are native to sub-Saharan Africa. That sounds promising, but unfortunately, despite the name and the fact that they look kind of blue in the right light, these monkeys are actually more of a dark gray. In fact, I couldn't find any mammals that had any blue fur like Stitch, so we had to go looking elsewhere. Now, I hear you saying, but Lee, what about like blue jays? They're blue, right? And hey, good shout. You might think so, but technically, blue jays aren't actually blue either. Yeah, really. Blue jay feathers mostly contain the pigment melanin, a blackish brown pigment. This is the same stuff that gives human hair and skin its color. Wait, so if blue jay wings have brown pigments, why do they look blue? Well, that's due to the unique way light scatters off the surface of the feather. It just makes them appear blue even though the feather doesn't actually have any blue pigments. And listen, I know if this sounds nitpicky, I get it, but this is my Stitch, and if he's gonna be blue, I want him to actually be blue, okay? And to find something that's like actually blue, we had to get weird. Some fish and other animals like lobsters can sometimes be blue, but the best, most consistent option I found? Introducing the blue star. Yeah, this is like Patrick Starr's blue cousin. This little guy is also known as Olyncia livigata because his body mostly contains a pigment known as Olyncia cyanin. Hey, I see what you did there. It is cyan in the name. And just looking at this thing, well, it's about as blue can be and as blue as I want my Stitch to be. So let's get its DNA, combine it with the rest, and bam, we've made our Stitch. Yeah, let's take a look at this adorable little monstrosity we've made. We've pulled DNA and genes from everything from cats to koalas, gorillas to sea stars, even hawks and butterflies. And you know what? As much as I wanted an alien pet like Stitch, all of this has made me realize just how incredible the animals here on our planet are. Just how diverse the animal kingdom is with these creatures each evolving in such cool, specific ways. I don't think we really need animals to make something cool and special here in our Disney Frankenstein labs. All we really need are a couple issues of zoo books. You know, maybe I will just stick with the cat. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film Theory. Today we're putting more than 60 films into one cohesive timeline, creating the Disney theory to end them all.